एक सेकंड करो ना। हाँ ठीक है, ठीक।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। अस्सलाम सर, अजमत सर, am I audible sir? हाँ, अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर, am I audible clearly?
हेलो।
हाँ, अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर। हेलो।
सलाम।
हाँ,
वालेकुम सलाम। अच्छा, युवा मेन आवाज।
yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, you are audible. And what about ours? Is it audible? We are audible.
यस यस यस।
Okay sir, thank you. Just we wanted to just test this.
हमारे यहाँ ये मैं मोबाइल से हूँ इस वक्त कनेक्टेड। हमारे चल ही नहीं रहा है इंटरनेट, तो यहाँ का ऑफिस का।
Yes sir.
तो आई विल ट्राई टू, यहाँ मैं अगर उस पे मैं कर पाता अपने कंप्यूटर से तो बहुत अच्छा रहता। बट लेट मी सी, अगर वहां से नहीं हुआ तो मैं फोन से ही प्रेजेंट भी करूंगा। इट विल बी लिटिल बिट कम्बरसम फॉर मी, बट चले कोशिश करेंगे।
हाँ, thank you, thank you sir.
मैं ये कर रहा हूँ फोन से ट्राई ना प्रेजेंटेशन का। लेट मी सी इफ आई एम एबल टू डू।
Adar is there, Adar. अस्सलाम वालेकुम
आप
sir.
मुझे हाँ इसको अलाउ करिए ना, प्रेजेंट शेयरिंग अलाउ कीजिए।
Okay, just a minute. Bizim sir network लेकिन कमजोर है सर, तो ये कई पहले पर presentation करके तो फिलहाल करूँगा शेयर के मैं कुछ शेयर स्टॉक। हाँ सर, तुम करो वो प्रेजेंटेशन शेयर, तुम जो तरीके से तो जो बेसिकली नेटवर्क हमारे कमजोर है कि that's why तो जी वन इन फ्रेम करना। मुझे सर आवाज का करियो बहुत म्यूट चीज करियो। ज्यादा ही तो करना है, वीडियो भी हो जाए। ये देखिए
अथर सब युवान छा
बेहतरीन सेल्फ डायरेक्टेड लर्निंग concept conduct and curriculum placement बेहतरीन सर। प्रेजेंटेशन चाहिए
ठीक अगर ये मैं पेट करूँ केयर तो ये पेट कर मोबाइल पे करो
हाँ बेहतरीन सर ये पकड़ ठीक हाँ।
Nah,
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I welcome to all Islam meeting. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, and very good morning to all of you. First of all, I welcome all the dignitaries, the participants who are joining us virtually or by physically for this one-day webinar, Self-Directed Learning, Veterinary Perspective. Before a formal welcome will be presented, let me introduce you about the concept of this, the self-directed learning, veterinary perspective by quoting a teacher from an African country. And he quotes, and I said that the Medicare of the education is the Medicare of the nation, which means that the average, the education, the average will be the nation. And in this education, the learning forms an important aspect, and learning is the method of acquisition of the knowledge, and imparting knowledge is the main crux of the learning. But often we have seen that the motive of learning or the providing the education is often towards going the teacher-centered, and we are neglecting the student-centered learning. This self-directed learning is actually an important part of the student-directed learning. In today's webinar, we will be presenting a platform for implementation and the use of self-directed learning in today's perspective, in today's conditions. So let me first invite the Professor and Head, Department of Anatomy, Dr. Abdul Razak Chaudhary, for the formal welcome, the participants and the dignitaries. Please, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Firdaus. Assalamu alaikum, namaste, and a very good morning to all of you. First of all, I am delighted to welcome our esteemed patron of the event, Professor Nazir Ahmed Ganai, Director Planning and Monitoring, PI IDP NAHEB, who has encouraged us to organize this event. I heartily welcome Professor Mohammad Tufail Vande sir, Dean, Faculty of Veterinary Science and Animal Husbandry, and Professor Masarat Khan ma'am, Dean, Faculty of Fisheries, and co-patrons of this event. I am also happy to welcome our distinguished inviting speakers, namely Professor Azmat Alam Khan, Associate Director Research, East Coast Kashmir, Dr. Francis Scepter, Assistant Professor, School of Veterinary Science, the University of Queensland, Australia, Dr. Syed Abdullah, Lecturer of Veterinary Parasitology, School of Veterinary Science, the University of Queensland, Australia. I also welcome all the respected faculty members to kindly attend this webinar and make it a success. I would also like to welcome Professor K.M. Lucy, Professor Veterinary Anatomy and Histology, Munnati Kerala, Dr. Leena Chandrasekhar, Dr. Shirangini, Department of Anatomy and Histology, Munnati Kerala, to be the part of this event. Dr. Firdaus Ahmed has already mentioned a bit about self-directed learning and need to upgrade veterinary education. Digitalization and concept of self-directed learning has become even more important after we have witnessed the efforts of ongoing pandemic COVID-19. where extra efforts have now been made to digitalize every human need. At the last, but not the least, I again welcome one and all on behalf of Veterinary Anatomy and Histology, East Kashmir, to this webinar to throw light on the concept of self-directed learning and its application in the veterinary education. Thank you. Over to Firdaus Ahmed.
Thank you, sir. Now we have with us the patron of today's function, Professor Nazir Ahmed Ganai, sir, PNM and PI of National Agriculture Higher Education Project with us. To hold this webinar, sir has always been a supportive, and when we have a concept of holding the seminar, we directly went to the Nazir sir, and without any hesitation, he gave us a green signal to hold this webinar. May I invite Dr. Nazir Ahmed Ganai sir, Professor Nazir Ahmed Ganai sir, to enlighten us about this webinar and throw his words of wisdom on these issues. Professor Nazir Ahmed Ganai sir.
Dr. Firdaus, thank you for having me here. We have this morning with us Professor Dr. M.T. Bandit, Dean Faculty of Veterinary Sciences. I believe Dr. Masrat Khan ji is also there, Dean Fisheries. My colleague Dr. Azmat Alam Khan, who is Associate Director Research as well, he is also in the program, Project of NAIB. Or Dr. Zahur Ahmed Pampuri, who is coordinating these programs at Faculty of Veterinary Sciences. The head Division of Anatomy, Dr. Razak Chaudhary. Dr. Firdaus Ahmed, who is coordinating this program. Dear faculty members, students, and especially our guest expert speakers from around the country and around the world. Good morning to all of you. Assalamu alaikum. I believe that after a very long gap, we are just organizing this kind of a program. I would compliment Dr. Bandit Saab, who just have given a green signal to the coordinator, Dr. Firdaus Ahmed, and to the Department of Division of Anatomy, Dr. Razak Chaudhary. They had to go ahead with this program. And Dr. Zahur, but special compliments to Dr. Firdaus, who has conceptualized this kind of a program. I believe that not only this, Dr. Firdaus had come to me along with another proposal, and that is something about kind of a self-directed learning, kind of an AI-driven system of learning in anatomy. And so he had just coupled the two proposals, this webinar and that proposal. I believe that it did not take me much of a time to just tell Dr. Firdaus, you please go ahead. So I compliment you for this. I hope that this would not be just one. This would be, among so many number of programmers which Dr. Tufel Ahmed Bandit Saab would sit with the faculty members and see that how best we can just take advantage. The topic which you have chosen today is so relevant to the current times. I believe that it would have been very difficult for us or anybody to convince the students or the teachers to go for the kind of self-directed learning. Or it would have been a bit of a difficult for every one of us to comprehend what is self-directed learning. But I believe over the last 2 years, around the globe, people are doing self-directed learning. Then all the universities, all the schools, and all the colleges are shut. Then the only other way of learning is the self-directed learning. And we are living in this very advanced age driven by information communication technology that has provided us that platform that despite everything being shut around the globe, it was global pandemic, but then hardly has any of students missed his classes or his that period of his study. So everybody has engaged himself. Though initially it was very difficult for every student to know as to what to do and how to do. That technology has made us to go for this self-directed learning. And thanks, of course, a lot of challenges this COVID has posed to us, but then we have learned so many number of things. And I believe that so many number of students who are admitted in foreign institutions over the last 2 years. Many of them have been attending those classes of those universities at their own level. Not only those courses, but then there was no one-to-one contact with the teachers. The only other thing for those students who were attending those very reputed institutions around the world, they were then compelled to find out the ways of self-driven learning. And I believe that it's very, very easy for the coordinators to convince the students or the faculty. But then what we have to do is then consolidate our understanding and our learning and our facilities to take it further. Let me share with all of you that in this very particular hall where we are sitting together today, in the year 2007, I had moved a proposal how many years, I believe more than 13 or 14 years before I had moved a proposal in the Board of Studies of the Faculty of Veterinary Sciences that we should go for e-learning. And that time I had said that e-learning is something like, anytime, anywhere learning at your own pace and time. And that time it was a bit difficult to make people understand. And many of my faculty members that time showed their kind of apprehension is that this blackboard, wherein there is an eye-to-eye contact of the teacher with the students, that's more effective. So that time lots of apprehensions were raised by the people that if we just substitute this, then maybe it may not be good. But now we have reached to a situation where now we are compelled to do so. Number one. The number two reason is that this technology which is available with us, these platforms, it has virtually made the role of a teacher kind of a redundant kind. Our conventional and a traditional teacher like me and others who used to share information with the students. That information the students are readily getting from the internet. Just Google the word and then they will get a lot of information. And many times the students are more knowledgeable and more aware of things happening in that particular discipline or in that particular subject. So then what is the role of the teacher? If all the material is available, so many number of learning academies are there for that particular course or for that particular subject around the world, then what's the role of the teacher? So again, this technology has now taken us one step further, that the role of a teacher has now changed. I'm the one who used to share information with the students, getting those age-old notes which he had learned by himself some decades before, and then sharing those notes with the students in the classroom. Now a teacher has to be as a guide, as a facilitator, as a mentor for the students. And the present day of this teaching and learning has to be now the student-centric. Earlier it used to be the teacher-centric. Now it has to be student-centric. Earlier, a student would get maximum information from the teacher, but now there are so many number of learning opportunities for the students. So this is something which is happening, and then we have to adapt to this change. Let me come to as to what are we doing in this university under NIHE, because under NIHE, during the last 1 year, from April to March 2021, we did conduct such programs, the one you are conducting today. More than 523 events did we conduct in this university. And I don't know how many of them have been conducted at Faculty of Veterinary Science, but overall 523 events. That means every day there must have been 2 programs going simultaneously in this university. That is kind and amount of the efforts our faculty members around the university have put in to make students go through this kind of learning system. And what is that thing which is driving this university for this particular cause? Is that once when we did conceptualize this program, what's called as National Agricultural Higher Education Program, we have to set our vision as to what far we are going to seek the support of the ICR or the World Bank for the program. And that time we told to the ICR and to the World Bank that we have a very specific vision for this program for our university. And please, my dear students, please listen to me very carefully. And that vision which we had visualized at that time is that, and I'm repeating it many times and repeatedly, and especially for my teachers, that it is our endeavor of the university and endeavor of the teachers, that we have to churn the next gen leaders who shall steer the technology-driven economy in the Jammu and Kashmir. Because we want that our students who qualify from this university are not those qualified graduates. They are knowledgeable and skilled graduates who are independent and who are the future leaders. Then quickly telling you whom do we call as those future leaders, which we are targeting at, and wherein we want to just wherein we are putting our best efforts, all the teachers, all the faculties, and all the university resources they are putting in, those leaders. So we believe that our students who are attending this program, they have to be self-driven. That is the first quality for a next gen leader or a future leader. A person who is charged with life and social skills, a person who knows how to manage his time and the resources well, a person who knows how to work in a team. That team could be a multi-ethnic, it could be multilinguistic, it could be multicultural. Why? Because we are living in a small global village. So, when we use it to just do kind of education in our system, it used to be having those core subjects, and then from the first day a student would be admitted, then we will just start, bombarding on him on those kind of the subjects, all anatomy, physiology, all those kind of the subjects, and that young mind of 18 years of age, having come out of his home and then admitted in a particular university, वो बेचारा बहुत परेशान हो जाता था. So then the first requirement for our new system of education is that it has to be, a student has to be self-driven, and for that we have to first make him understand those kind of skills, what we call as the soft skills. The other thing, what's our very important other endeavor is that we have to make those next gen leaders are the creative. The creative leaders are the ones who are observative, who are analytical, who have that critical mindset. Because I believe in my time, or मेरे साथ जो यहाँ पे लोग बैठे हैं ना, everyone of us know that it has been the culture of rote learning in throughout India. मेरे ख्याल में जब हम स्कूल में जाते थे, जितने भी बच्चे स्कूल में होते थे, सबको एक ही गाय का मजमून याद करवाया जाता था. और जितने भी बच्चे स्कूल में आते थे, every child used to be a very different child, but in the school all the students were required to remember that composition on गाय का मजमून. And I believe you honestly telling you that when I was a young chap of second or third, I never knew I never understand the Urdu language or English language, but then I had to remember that composition fully in English and in Urdu or in any other language. That means I had to just do that kind of rote learning. एक बड़ा खूबसूरत किस्सा मैं आपको सुनाऊंगा, मेरे ख्याल में आपको अच्छा लगेगा. इसकी एक खूबसूरत एग्जांपल है. हमारे इलाके का एक उन दोनों का एक वो टीचर भी था, लेकिन उस जमाने में वो मैट्रिक का एग्जाम भी दे रहा था, क्योंकि उस जमाने में जब मैं बहुत छोटा था, तो ये उन दिनों की बात है. तो उसके एग्जाम में एक क्वेश्चन आया था कंपोजिशन लिखने का, दैट वाज हबक खातून. प्लीज लिसन वेरी केयरफुली. एंड दैट पर्सन, I will not name, but उसका बाद में नाम पड़ा हबक खातून. He was a male. He had to write a composition हबक खातून, लेकिन उसने कभी हबक खातून का नाम नहीं सुना था, उसने ना कभी हबक खातून कोई कंपोजिशन लिखा था, तो उसको गाय का मजमून याद था. तो उसने सोचा the best way to write a composition on हबक खातून is that I replace गाय गाय एक और पता नहीं क्या क्या होता है. Everywhere you would just identify that there is the word of guy, you would replace it with हबक खातून. और आपको मैं बता दूं कि उस जमाने में एक प्रोग्राम आया करता था रेडियो पे, अगर कुछ लोग हैं यहाँ पे कश्मीरियों को जो पता है थोड़ा बहुत, तो ये बात में है ना, it was so interesting for the board of school education कि somebody has written a composition and हबक खातून and replaced the word guy, और गाय का मजमून लिख दिया था उसे. तो it was narrated in that, और उस बंदे का नाम बाद में पड़ गया था हबक खातून. कहने का मतलब ये है, that is a classic example of rote learning. We never knew as to what we are saying. We never knew as to what we are trying to remember. मैं बताऊं, शायद आप भी जो भी यहाँ पे लोग जो है ना, अपने बच्चों को दुनिया भर की सारी कंट्रीज के नाम, उनकी करेंसीज, उनके कैपिटल्स याद करवा रहे हैं, है ना. But unfortunately, why should we put such a pressure on our young minds? Because when that information is available, so it is better that we have to move away from that rote learning to being creative. And the other very important thing for those leaders whom we are endeavoring is that they have to be innovative, because we target what we call as a knowledge economy, and you would be the drivers for that knowledge economy. For that, you have to be innovative, because we understand all the progressive societies around the world. I know the Korea, the Japan, Israel, the Netherlands, they are the live examples how they have built their societies. आप देखो जरा अपने घरों में कौन सी ऐसी चीज है जो आपको कोरिया जापान इधर से नहीं मिली है. A small country like Korea, maybe 1/50th or maybe 100th of the size of the India, but then every gadget we are having with you is from Korea. Innovations we have built in and see the country gone so rich. So another thing which is very important is that we have to skill our students what's called as those forces and technologies. Even if we are in agriculture or in animal sciences, we cannot stay at bay. We have to just skill our students. What are those technologies? Are the ones driven by ICT, the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, the blockchain technology, the 3D printing, driven agriculture, the precision agriculture. So unless we also skill you guys, you would never be able to move. And ultimate goal is that we have to make you entrepreneurial. Innovations shall make you entrepreneurial. Therefore, you have to be creative because our another endeavor is that now the jobs are becoming very scarce. Number one, number two, all the jobs available around the in industry or in public institutions, many of jobs will be getting redundant because they will be believing that people who are holding those jobs do not have those kind of skills. So the other way is that instead of hunting so to be entrepreneurial, you have to have those kind of soft skills. You have to be creative. You have to be innovative, and you have to be skilled in those technologies. And uh, uh, and then what are we doing? What's our mission in the university? If we want to just achieve that goal of making you entrepreneurial, if our goal is to making you the next leaders, we are working really hard to just reform our curriculum, and we are making it choice-based, flexible, interdisciplinary, multi-institutional. So when I'm saying reform curriculum to make it choice-based, flexible, interdisciplinary, multi-institutional, multi-disciplinary means that it will never be possible unless it is a kind of a self-directed learning. For example, a student who believes that there is a course, which is of his choice, offered by MIT in US. The present system should allow that student to register for that course in MIT at his own pace, of his own liking, and of that particular different discipline, which otherwise we are not offering in this university, and that too beyond the shores, beyond those oceans. So that's what will help it reaching that goal. And the driving force to make it happen is this, what's called as self-directed learning. The first requirement for which is that the students have to be really motivated, that if they want to achieve something, they have to do it by themselves. And for that purpose, in the university, we are also introducing those kind of choice-based elective courses. What I was just emphasizing earlier, soft skills, the higher order skills, the innovation and entrepreneurial skills, business management skills. And at the same time, we are also trying our level best to build the capacity of our teaching faculty for there and make them as facilitators, as guides, as mentors, rather than those ones who have been sharing information. I believe that Dr. Azmat Alam Khan, who is also joining us in this program, had held so many number of programs over the last 1 year, wherein so many number of teachers have been, trained to be as the mentors or guides and facilitators. And there's another program in OFI. I believe that maybe very shortly he may be launching. Already we have just rather indicated Dr. Azmat Alam Khan. Go ahead. Other thing, what's also very important for us to do in the university is to also bring in some reforms in the university, which will create an ecosystem for that learning. And for that, let me share with you that we are bringing in at least two good reforms. One is called as the next gen student transcript. We believe when a student will leave this university, he should not only carry a record of those few number of courses, basic core courses, which is the minimum requirement for him to achieve a degree and to then go for hunting a job. But then that transcript should carry a record of what else he has learned over and above that core minimum course. So we want to do value addition for our students. We want to do better packing, marketing of our students so that wherever they go, whether for jobs in high-paid industry or wherever maybe for admission to some premier institutions, that transcript should help them. And one other important thing is that, let me tell you, that's very important that this coming off of this National Education Policy 2020 is emphasized the curriculum has to be so designed that it will help the students to be innovative and to be creative, to be innovative, and to have their own startups. But as on date, there is no such wherein they can students are the faculty for innovation and startup. So we are bringing up what's called as SCOST Kashmir Innovation and Startup Policy for faculty and for the students, wherein a student while doing his graduation or post-graduation can, on the basis of his innovation, can start building on a startup. So by the time he would graduate from the university, he should be ready with that startup, and in that startup, he should be, providing the jobs to so many number of other, people around him. So that is something happening. Let me say you that over the last 2 years, at least some 3 students have registered their companies as private limited, and by the end of this year, we believe another 5 student groups would be registering their companies as startups. So it is happening first time, in the university, a new concept. So I believe those students who are joining us today, they would also take the message that they have come out of their homes, they have living in our university for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, but then their parents have so many number of big hopes for them. This society has hopes on you guys. You have to start thinking from today that if you want to succeed in life, you have to build your capacity. You have to be creative. You have to be innovative, and you have to be entrepreneurial. And this university is committed to create a kind of an ecosystem where we would help us. At the same time, we are also building some new facilities in the university, what's called as artificial intelligence center, another of things and automation and big data analytics laboratory. Also, we are building things. And I believe if you want to just actually derive benefit out of these things, then it's very important then that this self-directed learning process would speed up that process of evolution of your students. You cannot rely on we teachers alone. You have to see wherever you find such resources available globally, you can reach them. And that depends primarily about your readiness to learn, how much committed you are, what kind of a passion you have. And the other thing, what's very important for you is you have to define your goals. You cannot, go for a particular course unless you have a defined goal. And once you have a defined goal, you need to know that strategy to reach to that goal. And once you will be going through those different kind of the courses, you have to also see that how do you monitor your that learning process. ये नहीं कि मतलब मैं सुबह से शाम तक 24 घंटे बैठा हूँ एक लैपटॉप के सामने पढ़ रहा हूँ लेकिन मुझे ये नहीं पता है कि मैं कहाँ से कहाँ पहुँचा हूँ. So you have to see that how your progress is monitored. Better is that you have your self-assessment, and at the same time, it's also important that if you have a guide, a teacher, or a mentor with you, you can also associate with him. Let him monitor you. Let him assess you. Let he tell you that what's your level of competence, so that you can just improve upon that. Then, of course, I had said earlier that teachers have a different role, and that endeavor which I was talking about, it is basically the teacher who has to shape you. Of course, you have the passion, but then ours is the primary responsibility. So that's about this self-directed learning process. And one good news I share with you that the proposal which you had submitted to us of around 3.5 crore rupees. So far, I have been able to get it inducted in one of the government programs. But then there is a meeting in the next week, wherein maybe this week only, or the next week, I believe, next week, wherein it would be then that time decided whether that proposal is true or not. But then I have put it in a program, in a scheme of around 3.5 crore rupees, wherein it is that kind of virtual dissection table and that kind of AI-driven learning in dissection and all of that things. So at a cost of 3.5 crore rupees. So let's hope that we succeed in getting that program. That would be a big thing happening for the Faculty of Veterinary Sciences. So at the end, let me again compliment Dr. Pandey Saab, and Dr. Masala ji is also there. उनको भी मैं बधाई देता हूँ. And Dr. Zuhur and all of you guys there. Thank you very much. Basically, I'm traveling in a car to my office. There may be a lot of shaking on it. So thank you very much for your very patient hearing. And my only request to the students is that you are the ones who can shape the society. Please work hard from today and see that how can you make this a better place of living. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You have covered almost all of the things that is needed for the self-directed learning. And thank you for that a small proposal we have put for establishing a skills hub in the Faculty of the Veterinary Science. Hopefully it will go through, and hopefully it will be the first in the country to establish such a skills hub in the Kashmir itself and in India itself. Thank you, sir. Thank you for a wonderful talk. Thank you, sir.
Let's hope that we succeed. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We have with us the worthy Dean of the Faculty of the Veterinary Science, Professor Mohammad Tufail Bande, sir. He is always supportive in organizing or arranging such type of webinars and such type of seminars. May I welcome the Professor Mohammad Tufail Bande, sir, the Dean, Faculty of Veterinary Science and Animal Husbandry, Shohama, to say a few words about this self-directed learning program. Dean, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Firdaus. I would like to thank and monitoring, Professor Nazir Ahmad Ganai, Dean, Faculty of Fisheries, Professor Masrat Khan, Associate Director Research, Dr. Azmat Alam Khan. Then we have the special invited guest, Dr. Francis Shapter, Assistant Professor, University, Queensland, Australia. Then our ex-student, Dr. Suad Abdullah, Lecturer, Veterinary Parasitology, University of Queensland, Australia. And the various scientists and participants. I suppose we have around 130 participants in this online program, which is both online and offline. I would like to congratulate Dr. Razak and his team, and lastly, Dr. Pampuri, NAP coordinator, and Dr. Firdaus, course coordinator, for organizing this one-day program, which is entitled Self-Directed Learning for Veterinary Perspective, organized by Division of Veterinary Anatomy, sponsored by NAHAP SCOST Kashmir. As you know, the self-directed learning is the process through which an individual takes responsibility for his learning. Generally, this is classified into two parts, that is assessing the needs and readiness for learning, and secondly, the identification of learning goals. Before you embark on studies, it is vital to ensure you are ready to learn. Self-directed learning encourages you to assess your situation to determine when to start studying. Generally, there are three forms of studies. One is the deep approach study, then second is surface approach study, and third is the strategic approach study. So this self-directed learning is a process or learning method in which individual takes initiative with or without the help of others in diagnosing their needs, formulating goals, identifying the human and material resources for learning, choosing and implementing appropriate learning strategies. We have these programs running in different parts of the world, like in the North American veterinary medical education. There are several veterinary schools, including a veterinary of California, Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, which have revised their curriculum for incorporating the self-defined learning programs. So these self-directed learning program, also learning on demand. It is a form of informal learning in different form from the traditional class, which is learning dominated by the curriculum and text messages. So there are various benefits of this method of teaching. It creates less stressful environment. It leads to advanced critical thinking skills. It encourages creativity. It breeds entrepreneurs. It allows the passion to grow. It helps to increase the focus on a particular subject. It improves the problem solving skills. It helps to develop the self-determination. It puts focus on the family. I'm sure this one-day webinar on the self-directed learning would be beneficial to both teachers and the students in view of the present situations when we are having the continuous restrictions for conducting the classes in physical mode. I wish all the best to the organizers for today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for supporting us for organizing this webinar. And we are expecting that our former head will be here, but she is somewhat engaged in some here in the Faculty of Fisheries, Rangil. So this was about the inaugural session of the today's webinar. So I thank you all. I put a thank you all to all the dignitaries who are here present physically or virtually, and for their valuable inputs and for their support. Thank you all. So now we'll be starting the session. And before this session, I welcome you all again for this virtual program, Self-Directed Learning, the Veterinary Perspective. And I can see there are 100 participants have joined in this program. And me or from outside this Union Territory, like I can see in this, there is my mentor, the Maya ma'am is there, Lucy ma'am is there, Shriranji ma'am is there. Welcome ma'am, your inputs and your presence will be highly appreciated and it is much needed. So let us start the first session of this today's webinar. And may I invite the first speaker of the today's webinar, Professor Azmat Alam Khan sir, the Associate Director Research Coast Kashmir, to deliver his lecture on the topic self-directed learning, concept, conduct, and curriculum placement. Before the sir starts his lecture, a brief description about the sir. Sir has done the PhD in the LPM with specialization in the poultry, specializing in the poultry. Sir is running a number of external funded projects and has completed even a lot. And sir is involved in a very important program here that is called as Career Counseling and Placement Center, where the students are groomed to participate in the different kinds of exams by holding the mock exams. So in this direction, I feel that this topic as self-directed learning, conduct, concept, and the curriculum placement is best suited for you, Azmat sir. So let us hear from the sir. Over to you, sir. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Firdaus. Our respected Dean, Professor M.T. Bande Sahab, who has been a great teacher, who has been my teacher indeed in the graduation, and then afterwards he has acted as a mentor to me when I was doing my post-graduation at IVRI, and then we together worked to our capabilities in division of LPM, particularly as far as in the field of poultry science, whatever under the mentorship of Professor Bande we could do. And I think we have been successful to a little extent to extend the facilities there and to put in place the best things for our future students who will be joining our institute. And I think we have the facilities or infrastructure what we have put in place at division of LPM with respect to poultry sciences is at par with the very good institutions in the country. Thank you, Professor Bandi, for mentorship you have provided for all these years. And I also thank Professor N.A. Ganai, the principal investigator of NAHEP, who again has been a great teacher, acclaimed teacher, and above all, he has been the guiding force for getting those externally funded projects and thinking out of box. He has been leading us in that manner, and particularly with this NAHEP, it is really an honor for our university that we have got this NAHEP project and many more projects, very innovative projects like Star College projects, which we have been able to get under the leadership of Professor N.A. Ganai. I also thank the organizers, the Division of Anatomy, for organizing this type of workshop, which is really a need of our. And then I also thank them that they have, I don't know how, how they could see that I could deliver here, and because my specialization is something different, as they thought, I am a man of poultry sciences, how they thought, let me try to come up to your expectations. I don't know how far I will succeed. Let me share my presentation. In fact, this when we talk of this self-directed learning, as people have Professor Nazir has talked about it, or our Dean has talked about it, it is something which comes from within. It's not actually you are in conventional teaching, the things are thrust upon you. But here in self-directed learning, it comes from within. अगर मैं इसको हिंदी में कहूँ, normally हम जब पढ़ते हैं, either we study for getting the grades or getting some certificate out of it, या आजकल के इस दौर में we want to get something in our API, जो हमारा API scorecard है, we want to add something to our that API scorecards. So beyond that, if you are really interested in learning some new thing, but you don't care whether it comes into your, whether it you get a certificate for it, or it counts, or it fetches you points in your API score, but you really from within you want to learn this thing. So those things come in self-directed learning. Then once you go for such learnings, if at all it comes in, you get a certificate for it, or it comes in your API score, that will be an icing on the cake. That should not be a prerequisite for this self-directed learning. Now let me try to put in few points which about the self-directed learning, which in fact I have learned over these days since Firdaus approached me with this the idea of this webinar. So when we talk of this self-directed learning, before that, if we go through the human history, how he moved from that being a caveman staying in that cave and to the present rocket age, in these years we have faced certain revolutions, or we have conquered certain milestones that have really helped us from moving from that caveman to the present rocket age, or presently when we are dealing with these DNAs and microorganisms, nano things and other things. So the first thing was when we developed the capacity of language, so that one man could communicate with another person, one man could share his ideas with his fellow human being. So the two minds came together. So two minds started thinking together. They exchanged their ideas, and it added to the knowledge, it multiplied the knowledge. And then after that, there came another very big revolution, that was writing. When the same knowledge, those ideas there that were put in writing, they could here, when there was only language, when writing was not there, only the contemporaries or those living together, they could communicate with one another. But with invention of writing, now they could leave that from one generation to another generation, they could share knowledge, or from one place to far off place, that writing could be transmitted and they could exchange the ideas. Then,
Excuse me, sir.
yes.
Are you sharing screen now, or?
Yeah, I am sharing screen.
But we are not seeing your screen, sir.
Let me. Are you getting something?
Now it has come, yes. You click on the presentation, sir, just below.
Okay.
Yes. Full screen you do, sir.
Okay.
5. And now it's coming. Sir.
So we were talking about certain revolutions that helped us to move from this caveman age to the rocket age. The second important step was writing, when we put down our ideas and they could be transferred from one generation to another, or from one place to another place. Then after that was the age of printing. This got only writing had certain limitations, but with the advent of printing, it got we could disseminate our ideas, our knowledge to far off places and to a large extent. And then this networking, this is a solution when everybody is connected to everybody, and through multiple means, through multiple media. We have nowadays, we are in fact living in this information technology age, where we have so many avenues of sharing our information. We have print media, we have electronic media, we have social media, and many more things whereby we are all of are connected. These perhaps this sharing of the knowledge, and this is multiplying the knowledge at such a pace that now we are generating such a amount of information that it is very now we have to think in those terms, how to store that in a large body of information, how to handle that information. We are now in that age. So when it comes to learning, this is somebody has very nicely put it, that if we want to learn something, if we read that concept, if we read it, we get 10% out of it. If we hear those words, we get 20%. If we view the pictures, still pictures, we get 30%. If we watch the movies, we get 40%. If we watch the demonstration, we get 50%. If we teach that activity, we get almost 70%. If we simulate the activity, we get 90%. And if we participate practically in that activity, we get 100% out of that knowledge, or out of that learning, what we are trying to do. Here, I would like actually to narrate a story. You see, it's something that yesterday we considered as a sort of a fiction is becoming a reality nowadays. Actually, when I was in my 7th or 8th grade in a school, there we had in our English textbook, there was one fiction. In those days, I think computers were also not so popular, because in that fiction he was trying to talk of computers, but he didn't name it as a computer. He talked of a machine. So in that there were several scenes, if you can say, in that story. So in that the scene one could be like this. Scene one was like this. There were some kids who went up into their attic or the upper story of their house, and there they found something like a book. They discovered something which was actually a book. Then those kids were discussing among themselves, what is this? Then some grown-up kid came and he said, oh, this is called as a book. When my grandfather's father was when he was a child, they used to study from this thing, and they used to go to a place where all kids of a particular locality, they could assemble and they could study together. They were talking in those terms, and they were finding it quite fascinating. Then and in the second scenario or the second scene of that same story, the father and the mother, they were talking, they were very much worried about their own kid. They were saying that our kid, say Johnny or Firdaus, he's looking quite anxious. What is the reason? What is the reason why he is so anxious? Then they started discussing that perhaps his teacher, and teacher in that story was they called it as a machine. So that machine is giving him trouble. Then they took the child and that machine to a doctor, to a clinic. There, when that doctor examined that machine, then he could diagnose that this machine had gone a little bit, it had accelerated. Then he talked to father. Then he said, okay, I have set it, I have tuned it, or I have set it right. Now it is in the right kind of speed. Now, if at that time it was all they were talking in terms of a fiction, but if we look at our times, particularly since this pandemic is there, you see this Byju's or some other school apps. Those I have some school apps I have listed here. All these school apps. Now our my child sits in front of a machine, I say a computer or a tab he has, or a tablet he has, and he sits there, and then he is being taught that that machine or that computer is now a teacher. And sometimes something may go wrong with it, and it may start, it may go say a little bit fast, or it may go slow. Then it may require tuning. So what was fiction some years ago is nowadays a reality we are seeing. Now, coming to our teaching theories, what we are supposed to discuss today. If we talk of various teaching theories, we have pedagogy, we have andragogy, we have heterogogy, then we have another pedagogy and cybergogy. Of course, the pedagogy is that old type of teaching. It is all teacher directed. It is a teacher who determines everything. Then in andragogy, it is learner directed. It is the learner involvement is there. And in heterogogy, it's more learner determined, or more learner directed. In pedagogy, it is actually peer, or sometimes it is named as para, P-A-R-A, or peer. Peer means equals. So the group of students, they study in groups and they determine what is to be studied. And cybergogy is that is in present age, where with the use of computers and ICT, etc., is involved in teaching. As we move along from one level to another, from pedagogy to heterogogy, we see that this learners' involvement is increasing, while as the instructors or the teachers' control, that control type of thing, it is coming down. Here is a difference between these three goggies, that is pedagogy, andragogy, and heterogogy. When we talk of dependence, the pedagogy is learner dependent. In andragogy, learners are independent, while as in heterogogy, learners are interdependent. They are actually they find the problem and they are able to manage their own learning. As far as learning resource is concerned, the whole resource lies with the teacher. Andragogy is learning from their own experiences. In heterogogy, the teacher provides some resources, students find some other resources, and then learner decides the process of learning and using of those resources. The reasons learning here are in pedagogy, we want to advance to some next stage, say from one class to another. Here it is they aspire to increase their responsibility to get take up the new responsibility. For that they not want to learn things. Here they want to perform efficiently. It is not actually need based in case of pedagogy. Then in focus in pedagogy is subject centered. In andragogy it is goal driven, while as in heterogogy it is inquiry driven. It is more proactive approach. The motivation in pedagogy is always external. It's a parent, it's a teacher, if there is a competition. In andragogy and heterogogy, it is all internal, self-driven, or they want to increase the self-esteem, confidence, recognition. All this is the main motivation in the other forms of learning. The role of the teacher, as by now you have guessed that here in pedagogy, teacher is believed to know the most. He knows everything, and it is he who decides how things are to be learned. While as in andragogy and heterogogy, the teacher's role is mere a facilitator. He just encourages, and in heterogogy he develops the capability of these learners to learn, and the things go on. No, I think it has been now by now defined as Bande sir also has defined it in a very lucid way. So the classical, some definitions that you find in the literature, these are I have just listed them here. It is the learning strategy that allows learners to take charge of their own learning process, and diagnose their own learning needs, identify their learning goals, select the strategies for learning, and then evaluate the learning performance or outcomes. Similarly, the Brookfield has defined it in a similar manner. There's a little bit change of words, and then Novels also has defined it in a similar way, where it is the individual's own initiative is involved to diagnose their learning needs and learning goals and other things. Why this SDL is required? Because it improves critical thinking and reflection. It increases learner engagement and motivation, gives learners more control over learning, improves ability of learners to investigate and question ideas and apply knowledge in practical situations. It supports development of independent ideas and self-confidence, makes learners more capable and able to adapt to new environments, and promotes democracy of learning and social justice. It better prepares them from complexities of workforce and encourages growth and personal development, teaches learners to think for themselves. The purpose is to plan, and the purpose of SDL would be to plan and participate in one's own learning activities, to develop the capacity of learning and thinking of learner, to develop the sense of independence by enhancing emancipatory learning, to develop the problem solving approaches, to develop time management skills, to develop decision making processes. The whole process involves 4 steps: the self motivation, self management, self monitoring, and self modification. This is sort of a model of self directed learning, where in self-motivation, we enter to enter learning tasks, take responsibility, then plan our own learning outcomes and activities. Then in self-management, we need to control our behaviors and resources to think independently, solve problems, creatively, and make decisions. Then in the self-monitoring, we have to consciously monitor one's own thinking and actions through self-reflection, evaluation, and metacognition. And in self-modification, we need to change our behavior based on self-monitoring and on feedbacks received from others. So this is some sort of a model of self-directed learning. There will be several steps involved. First would be to decide what detailed knowledge or skill we want to learn, then decide specific activities, methods, resources, or equipments, then decide where to learn, then setting specific deadlines or intermediate targets, then decide when to begin a learning episode, deciding the pace at which we want to proceed during that learning episode, estimating the current level of knowledge and skill and progress in gaining the desired knowledge and skill, detecting any factor that has been backing or hindering our learning, obtaining the desired resources or equipment, preparing and adapting a room, saving or obtain the money necessary for use of certain human or non-human resources, finding time for learning, and taking certain steps to increase the motivation for learning. There are, of course, the characters there for the teacher as well as the learner in SDL. The teacher should be open and open to change and ambiguity. It should be flexible and empathetic. He should be optimistic, and he should have desire to empower students, not control. Here, in SDL, the control part with teachers that stick and all those things, they are gone. If they are only to empower, they are there to guide, and they are there to motivate, and they should be facilitators, the teachers, and they should themselves be the model of this lifelong learning. They should be themselves involved in this SDL activity. Themselves, they should be learners, and they have to prove it from their own. They cannot just be talking only about this SDL, but themselves they should do this. And the learner characteristics are, they should be autonomous, they should be connected, they should be self-directed, self-regulated, and self-determined. Nowadays, we have a lot of MOOCs courses. We have a lot of those courses like Coursera, edX, Udacity. Then in Government of India has launched this SWAM portal, and a lot of resources are available there for this self-directed learning. And now the UGC is coming up with an idea of National Academic Credit Bank, where whatever you acquire, whatever the courses you go acquire from those MOOCs platforms, then there is a possibility of stacking them, and this will be counted as a part of your regular degrees. That scenario is there. It is in a very near future will be in that scenario. Professor Nazir Ghanai also talked about our that new generation marks card or new generation transcript, which is talking about that is also aimed at that, where we whatever those from MOOCs or from some other sources, whatever the courses we acquire, we will be getting that included in the certificate. And this academic credit bank is even a step ahead of that. There are in India, if we see, there are some lot of university now. Almost every university is falling in line, and every university is coming into this self-determined learning. But these are some of the these 10 universities where they are going in a big way, particularly the IGNOU. And incidentally, I myself have enrolled in one of the IGNOU programs, that is postgraduate diploma in animal welfare. And this is my iCard there at IGNOU. Few SDL courses in veterinary sciences are in our sciences, they are also available. Tanuvas has a large battery of courses. These are only PG diploma. They have some certificate courses also in addition to these, in orthopedics, in regenerative medicine, ophthalmology, dermatology, and poultry production, all those things. Then Karnataka State Open University, they have some courses. Bombay Veterinary College is a part of MAFSU. They have some courses, and so many other universities. A lot of those courses that can be part of self-determined learning. Hello. Hello.
आपको प्रोजेक्ट हो गया हाँ सब आपने करवा दिया आपको
Please unmute yourself. Please.
Hello. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of resources, if we talk of resources for the self-determined learning, so we have so much of resources available, particularly on the internet. If you surf, you then fail to हमारे कश्मीरी में कहते हैं मूंग डालस मज गसन. We get lot of resources. We have texts, we have PowerPoints, we have videos, we have animations, we have a lot of even courses are there. The mock tests you can find there, which you can use for your self-determined learning. I have put here some of just a sample. Of those sources which I believe my system will support me. See, this is one of the videos I could find there about skeletal anatomy. Since this program is organized by the anatomy people,
So it runs along the spine of the animal. And
you
then
see
we
this
have
always
that we
this
break up the
thing
limbs
used to haunt
specifically. So
our
we have
students. What is
proximal,
dorsal, what is
which
caudal, what is
closer to the body, toward the body. And distal
those,
is the aspect
what
of
is
the
the median
limb
plane, all these
specifically
things
that's away from the body.
is showing there.
To my hand,
Similarly,
and it hit the
about the
period, so we had
bone
to turn
and
in
about
from dorsal
those
rostral
points on
fat of
those
dogs.
bones,
Quite
you
often,
can see,
or
you
when
see,
there's a certain dinosaur
in a
class,
very
'cause it's
detailed
puppy class,
manner,
apparently can't.
all these things what you study
The hind
in your
foot only has
osteology,
4.
in your
It's
anatomy
your-
classes, it is
So one thing
given
that's
here.
really important to note are the metatarsal bones. So again,
Similarly, there are a lot of other resources. If we can see here, this is about my field of interest, the poultry sciences. You can see now this is from
इस वीडियो
in the
को
gynecology.
मोहम्मद रशीद की फरमाइश पर बनाया गया है. बात करेंगे.
They are showing
इसी के
how to
साथ
pass that
हम वीडियो
AI
की
gun
शुरुआत करते हैं.
when we
अगर
want to
वीडियो
go for
आपको अच्छी लगे
artificial
तो,
insemination.
और इसके बाद ये ओवेरी है, ये ओविड ट्यूब कितनी थिन आकार की हो. देखिए किस तरह से लिगामेंट के साथ आपकी फ्लोपिंग ट्यूब जो रिप्रोडक्टिव ट्रैक को इंजर कर सकती है. थोड़ा सा हिलाएं कि सर्विक्स की लोकेशन ये आपको टाइम के साथ साथ, देखिए मैं जितनी मर्जी फोर्स कर लूं इसके साथ, लेकिन गन पास होने का नाम नहीं ले रही. ये वीडियो BVSc VLD स्टूडेंट.
These were some of the glimpse of the resources, but then just I wanted to talk about what our university is doing. Dr. Professor Nazir Ganai has already talked about certain initiatives, but we also at our university website, we have tried to place some e-content there, which can be used by these self-directed learners. We have the resources for Mulberry, for those sericulture resources are available there. We have complete e-course on poultry sciences. It is available there. If you go there, you can find a lot of resources in form of the Word files, the text. Then you can find the PPTs, and you can find a lot of videos in various aspects of avian production and management, and also on the commercial poultry production and hatchery management. In this there you will find those other resources. There you find a lot of videos on particularly in use of these ICT resources, or how you can make videos, how you can make Google Forms, how you can make those use present day things, these virtual things, make that will be very helpful for at least for our teachers to go for these virtual classes. So all these resources are available on our university website. And then here I have given this URL link. This is an article where we have tried to teach the poultry sciences by just narrating a story. This is actually a conversation between एक मुर्गा दूसरे मुर्गी से बात कर रहा है, and in that during that conversation, if you go through that complete conversation, you come to know a lot of things about poultry management, poultry, how things go about, what is a broiler, what is a layer, and how the eggs are laid, and all those things you come to know without this is just you are reading, or you are just going through the conversation between two chickens. Here is a link for that. You can go, you can yourself read it and enjoy this story. So this was all what I wanted to say, but I want to end with a saying of John Dewey. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for a wonderful talk. Now there will be some feedbacks. If anybody has to put any feedback, please.
Okay, good morning to one and all present in the webinar. I extend my gratitude to Professor Azmat Alim Khan for his lucid explanation about the whole process of self-directed learning, its importance, the whole process, strategies, and how far our university has progressed in creating resources for self-directed learning. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I think the Masrat Ma'am, Dean, Faculty of Fisheries, has joined us. Welcome for the webinar, for today's webinar. Now we are moving to the second lecture of today's program. I think Dr. Frances Chapter, is she here? Is she here? Okay.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am. So
Hello.
Dr. Frances Chapter, before she presents her lecture, let me give you an overview of his lecture. Dr. Frances Chapter, her background is actually from the agriculture sciences, and she has done the PhD in the molecular genetics in 2008. And she is passionate about the teaching and has worked as a facilitator. And she has joined tutoring the Queensland University, Australia in 2011. And she has developed 40 vertically and horizontally integrated online adaptive tutorials for the veterinary sciences. And in 2017, I think she has developed a new thing that's called as the Student Clinical Skills Hub. So we welcome you, Frances Chapter. We will welcome you for today's topic, that is Clinical Skill Hub to augment veterinary technology clinical teaching. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen and make sure that that's come across. So hopefully you can see my image. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. I'm very grateful for the invitation. And thank you to Dr. Azmat for setting up such a beautiful start to my talk and being able to go through the pedagogy, exactly the pedagogy that sits behind how we've developed our clinical skills hub here at the University of Queensland. So the image that's on the front screen here, so hopefully you can see that my mouse is moving around because I'll use it to point to different aspects as we go through the presentation. So this is our UQ Clinical Skills Hub. We set this up in 2017. We started with effectively an empty room and about 30 animals. So the cow, the horse, a couple of these dogs, an anaesthetic machine and a surgery table, and 8 empty trolleys. It was very, very bare when we started. The first week that we opened, we had 11 students visit. That was it. And the second week wasn't much better, I have to say. It took a little while to establish a culture for our students that included self-directed learning. So our use of this facility sits outside our program. There is no, up until this year, COVID has changed things a little bit, but the remit for this student-led facility was that this was for students to engage with beyond their timetable coursework. So when we added this to the vet school, we didn't take any coursework out, we didn't take any contact out. This was specifically designed for students to come in between classes and after classes to practice their skills. And there were two sort of reasons that this was established. The first was that every year we do graduate surveys from the people that hire our students, and there was a growing, it wasn't terrible, but there was a growing concern that students were losing confidence in their skills and they weren't performing their skills particularly well. So if you asked one of our graduates how to insert or place a catheter, they could tell you every detail, but when they went to do it, they didn't do it confidently. They were very nervous about it and they clearly hadn't had enough practice. The reason was because at the same time as we were getting this feedback internationally, there was a growing movement to place these student practice laboratories into facilities across globally. So particularly in the UK and Europe, there was a growing use of these clinical skills hubs that were relying on models and simulations to allow students to practice before interacting with the live animals. So this started about 15 years ago for the veterinary industry. Obviously for medicine, this has been going on a lot longer. So it was sort of a transition of a laboratory system that had been working very well for medical community. And so Sarah Bailey was one of the first people to start to create one of these skills hubs in an old operating theatre, in actual fact. It was an old equine operating theatre that was unused, and she set it up as a practice area for her students and started to, was able to record the benefits immediately. So we picked it up for UQ in 2017 and have been developing it every year since. So the reason that we've promoted this so much, there are a lot of reasons, and some of these I believe will carry across and be relevant for students around the globe. Some of them may be a little bit UQ specific, but certainly we're seeing a huge diversity in the students that are coming through the veterinary program. 2 years ago, my youngest student was 16 and my oldest was 53 entering the program. So the 53-year-old had been an emergency, an ambulance paramedic for his entire life and had brought a very unique skill set into the course. The 16-year-old had really done nothing but read books and study, because you don't get into this program any other way. So they had very limited life experience, very limited physical skills, and we see this huge diversity year in, year out. I'm not sure about others. We certainly have a very high percentage of female students. So we sit somewhere between 70 and 90% female student, which has changed and evolved quite a lot. Because of the difference of age between our students, we have a different set of life skills. We have about 20% of our students who have actually done some form of veterinary clinician work, veterinary nursing in the past. But more commonly, what we're seeing are students who've had no animal interaction at all when they enter our program. Some of them have not even owned a pet. We're still trying to work out where the link to veterinary science is, but certainly they're not coming in with that practical experience. Additionally, there's a huge range in manual dexterity. Just like we have different learning styles and different mental acuity, there is a very large range in manual skills, and we're not evaluating that before we invite these people into our programs. So we have to work with a full range of manual dexterity. Some students pick up skills-based learning very, very quickly. So within their pracs, they are demonstrated, they apply that knowledge. They might get to perform a skill once or twice, and they master it effectively and are able to reproduce that skill moving forward. For others, that's nowhere near enough time. And by the time they leave their prac, they still haven't even acquired skill, let alone mastered it. And there's none of that enduring learning that stays. This is a profession that's highly ambidextrous, so they need to be able to use both hands, and until they enter the program, very few of the students can do that. We do have some musicians who are used to doing things with an ambidextrous approach, but it's pretty limited. Touch is one of the few senses, it's the only sense that we have that's two-way. So how something feels is directly proportionate to how you touch it, and how you touch it is impacted very much by your vision and your prior knowledge. So when those students are learning to palpate, it may be the first time in their life that they have been asked to describe something simply by touch when they couldn't see what it was. So this is abdominal palpation, rectal palpation. For some students, this is absolutely incredibly difficult, and they need far more practice, and they actually need practice just developing that tactile sensitivity before we move them on to the skill that we need them to learn, which is the veterinary skill. Building muscle memory is essential, and these guys simply can't get enough practice during our coursework. Our course is, the UQ course is run over 5 years, and it's exceedingly full. The students are here anywhere up to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week of contact, and we still can't give them enough practice to develop the muscle memory. The importance of muscle memory in a practical setting means that for me, so I teach the first year animal handling courses. If the students have no muscle memory for tying the knot, then they're all about the knot and they're not watching the cow anymore. And I need them to be watching the cow and monitoring its behavior. So it's really critical for things like learning to tie a knot to restrain a cow, that they are able to tie that knot before they walk into the practical. So having a student clinical skills hub means that the students can self-evaluate. They know what skills they have and what they haven't, and they can come in here and build that muscle memory for these critical skills that allow them to focus. One of the main ones where this has been really, valued by our students is around suturing. So we have silicone suture skins in our hub, and needles and suture material, and 77 instructional videos that take them right through from how to handle the equipment, how to use the suture appropriately, and there's about 40 or 50 different suture patterns, so that they can practice the suture patterns and be able to tie all their suture knots and all their ligations. And that has been practiced to the point of muscle memory before they enter their 4th year surgery pracs, so that when they go into the surgery pracs and they're working, in a small group with a tutor, they can direct their questions to the tutor, not about how to tie a knot, but how to focus on the complex surgery or how to monitor their patient, or how to correct active bleeding quickly. And they're not thinking anymore about how to tie the knot and how to hold that equipment in their hand to do so. So this muscle memory is huge. How much time it takes to develop that muscle memory is very different from student to student or individual to individual. And by creating a self-directed learning space, students who don't need this practice are not wasting their time. They're not losing time in a prac. Students who need the practice can come in and spend the time, and more so they can choose the way. So Dr. Azmat's talk was really beneficial for setting up this idea of students choosing the way that they learn and choosing how they interact with the resources as best suits them individually. And that's really important with this skills hub. Some of them like video resources, some of them prefer photo guides, some of them prefer to work one-on-one with a tutor. Some of them like to come in a lot, some of them only come in occasionally, but they're tailoring what they need to their individual strengths and weaknesses, and that makes it work really well. One of the critical things here is that it's a safe space. So often students won't try a clinical skill in a prac, because they're conscious of being observed by their peers. They don't want to fail in front of their teacher, and they feel the pressure of that, and they'll step back from volunteering to try. Our self-directed learning space is a very safe space where nobody's observing them. There's no time pressure. It's not like they have 10 minutes left till the end of the prac and they have to do whatever they can do. So they stay until they're ready to leave, and that creates a safe environment where they take risks and they have no concerns about failing. So one of the other things that we have done here is there are no live animals or live tissue, which means there's very limited risk. There's almost no way, other than a needle stick injury, there's no way you can hurt yourself in here. So it's okay for the students to fail repeatedly until they figure out how to do something. And that creates a really deep level of learning. They understand why it works, not just how to do it. So simulations and models are on the increase. There's now a whole veterinary model industry that has popped up in the last few years. You can buy almost anything for veterinary training now at a price. And it's that second part that's quite difficult to manage. So the reason they've become so popular so quickly is because they really are working. We can see it in our program. The suturing competence of our students has gone through the roof since we've been able to provide them with practice skins and suturing equipment and resources to support how they learn that best. Our suturing proficiency has increased tremendously, and our students, we've actually been able to reduce the length of our surgery pracs in 4th year because now the pracs are focused on the surgery and not on the suturing skills. So that's been a tremendous benefit for both staff and students. And I think globally, I don't think it makes much difference what country you're teaching veterinary science in. All of us are faced with these concerns around increasing cohort size, increasing awareness of risk, and universities being quite risk adverse. So OH&S constraints, things that we were able to let students do on live animals in years gone by, we now can't. There are welfare concerns and social responsibility concerns around animal usage, which means that some of the students that some of the procedures that students would have previously learnt on an animal are no longer able to be performed as a prac. And so the use of models is being used to replace some of those as well. Budgetarily, we can teach a lot more students with models than we can with live animals at the same time because of the reduction in risk. So our teacher-student ratios can be higher. So we might have 1 teacher to 40 students to demonstrate and first practice a skill using models. However, if we were to do that with animals, we would need a much higher number of staff to be able to do that safely if live animals were being used. We do find anything that involves live animals, because you have a high staffing ratio, because of the management costs of using live animals and accessing live animals, and their transportation, they're very high cost pracs. They're extremely expensive to run in terms of both staff workload and financial. And so anywhere where we can make sure, we need to optimize our usage of the live animals, and that can sometimes be done simply through preparing better using models and then moving to the live animal experience as a secondary thing. We're also looking at how we can use it for assessment. So obviously any sort of practical skills assessment that is based on live animal usage is very complicated, very hard to run repeatedly, equitably, and very expensive. And so we are looking at how these models can be used and how those skills transfer. So some skills still require that final experience with a live animal, and others can be taught on a model, practiced on a live animal, and come back to the model for an assessment, which reduces again the costs and animal usage and workloads that go with that. One of the really big things that's come out of having the hub and having the students practicing in a very relaxed environment is it provides time to talk to the students about what they're finding that is really difficult about each skill. So you actually can work one-on-one with them. You can see at what point they get stuck or at what point they are performing a skill incorrectly. And that informs our teaching. So next time we go back into that prac, we can then tailor the way we deliver the prac from what we can see the student experience of learning it is. So quite often as experts, things seem easy to us. And as teachers, we sometimes forget how incompetent we were when we started, and we can skip steps. So in skills development, deconstructing for the learner is really important. That's very hard to do if you're an expert. You've forgotten how many little steps there were when you learnt how to do that skill. So working with them one-on-one and with an inexpert operator, so my background is ag science, not vet science, it brings another perspective to which of the steps the students are finding hard in acquiring that skills competency. And we've been able to integrate that into the way that we teach it in class as well as in our Student Clinical Skills Hub. So at the moment, there is a huge focus in Australia on animal welfare and ethical animal use. What we've done with our animal handling courses, for example, is that students provided theory of how to handle animals. We then practice some of the minor skills on models first. So you can see on this one, this is first year practicing haltering a horse. So this particular first year had never worked with horses before, had never used a horse halter before. So before we took him down to the prac with the live horses, he repeatedly haltered the horse, the plastic horse that we have in the skills lab, so that by the time he interacted with the live horse, he was no longer fumbling with the gear or figuring out how to buckle it. He knew exactly how to handle the equipment, and all he had to worry about was the horse. I'm not sure how you guys are going over there, but certainly here we are finding that an increasing number of students have never seen a horse before they enter our program. They've never worked with a horse, and they're quite fearful during their handling pracs of the horses and the cattle and sheep. Actually, they are struggling interacting with those larger animals because they've never been around a larger animal. So if they can have all their equipment skills before they interact with the live animal, that makes their prac much more powerful and means we can focus on that animal interaction instead of equipment. Was there a question, or it was just a mic?
Just a mic, fine.
Okay, thanks, Wade. Okay, so this is a map of our facility. It's quite small. You don't need a large facility for them to be effective. I was very fortunate. This one was actually purpose-built for self-directed learning. You can see there's shelving on both sides. And now that we've expanded to the point where our hub is full of activities, so where we started with about 20 to 30, we now have over 500 different learning activities in here that the students can choose from. We use that shelving. Activities are stored in plastic tubs and they're labelled and numbered so students can go and find what they want to do. You can see in this space here, so this is only 20 metres by 9 metres. We have all our trolleys on wheels and we regularly move this around. So occasionally now with COVID, we're hampered with our spaces for teaching, and we actually do hold tutorials here. And so if we need to do that, we can push all those trolleys to the side and put seating in, or we can rearrange those trolleys into different shapes to suit whichever the prac is that we're having here. In the back area, we have a group workstation and a communication suite. So this consult room is, this is actually 103, the photo, and 104 is exactly the same. 103 is a narrow room with one-way glass on each side and speakers. And what we do is in each consult room, we run scenario-based consultations. We have actors who pose as clients and a senior clinician who sits in with one student who role plays being the vet, the actor role plays being the client, and they run a full consult, a veterinary consult from start to finish. 5 of their peers sit here with headphones on and listen and observe through the one-way glass. And then all their peers come in for a debrief and they discuss their communication techniques, what worked and what didn't. As first years, they do this just to take a history and to get the feel of a consult. But by third year, we are actually giving them scenarios where they have to inform a patient's owner that it needs euthanasia, or provide a very poor prognosis, or provide a complicated, expensive surgery option, which might be turned down by the client. So we help them work through how they're going to communicate that with different clients. We have an outdoor area. This is staged seating that looks down into the facility. And you can see from the outside, it looks quite busy. This was taken a little while ago, but it's just, we keep it looking busy so that every time a student comes in, they see a different activity and are reminded of something that they might or might not be needing to do. What's been really critical to this is developing a community and a sense of ownership by the students. So when we started, we got very little buy-in. The students were really excited about the idea of it, but not being used to owning their own education in this way. So Vet Science here is a very structured program. They don't have to choose courses. They don't have to choose timetables. They're just handed what they will have to do for the next 5 years. So to train these students to a self-directed learning option was a gradual process. So these are some of the first students. You can see how empty the facility looks in this photo. These 4 have graduated now, but this is Emily and Cameron and Laura, and I'm just not sure who that is. And I remember their names because I worked with them that much in that first year. So one of the first things that we did down here was set up so that they could practice draping for surgery for their 4th year pracs. These are student quotes, which highlight some of the things that you need to consider to develop that sense of community and what they found so useful about having this facility. This is a really common comment that we see now is I wouldn't be in 4th year without the hub. It's as simple as that. Many of the students, I have every year, many students who come and speak to me and say, how did they do it? How did they ever learn these clinical skills before they had somewhere to practice them? I don't understand how anybody graduated before we had this facility. Some of our students will spend, I think, the biggest one that we had, one student spent 154 hours here during her 3rd year of study. So some of the students use it extensively, others less so. And as I said, that's about what they personally need. Having a friendly environment where the student feels welcome is really important. They don't have to come here. So if they don't enjoy it, they don't come back. They're very busy. We're asking them to learn an awful lot of content. And so building this sense of community amongst the students and between the students and staff is really important. They really need clear instructions. So guided activities have made all the difference. If they come in and see the model, whatever model it is, even a simple injection pad, and there isn't a guided activity to say, okay, find an 18 gauge needle, put it on a 20 ml syringe, draw up 15 ml of saline, inject it into the injection pad, don't forget to aspirate. If you don't have that level of detail, they kind of get lost and distracted, and then they move away. So every activity in here needs to have a card with a guided activity to sort of help the students understand what they need to do. They also need a guide depending on what year they're in. So the simple flow is that it follows their coursework year by year. So when a first year comes in, they're usually all about the animal handling or anatomy. So they do a lot of anatomy in first year, and we have dog skeletons here that can be rearticulated. We have 3D models and even colouring books to help them learn the bones and the different faces of the bones and things. So it's some of the models are quite basic, and they're not all used by all of the students, but they're there if they're needed, and they create this holistic picture where a student can walk in on any given day and go, I'm in 2nd year. I've got nothing to do for the next hour. What should I do? What could I do that would help me? And then they can find an activity card that matches that, and then they can go forward and practice that skill. And then they go out, and it's part of the process of developing this has been starting those, what's referred to as a 10 monkeys. So you get 10 students who come in, they find it useful, they really enjoy the activity they did, and they go out and they tell 10 of their friends. And then next week, 10 of their friends pop in, they enjoy an activity, and they go out and tell 10 more. And suddenly we've gone from 11 student visits a week up to 100 student visits a week, up to a couple of 100 students on a busy week. And so it's those iterative positive experiences that get that. What has been incredibly positive and beneficial to this facility is that staff from every area of this school come in and contribute. So while I look after the facility and I manage the learning scaffold and manage the learning resources, I don't star in any of the instructional videos. I don't write the user guides. That goes back to the staff member who is the expert in that skill. So Norbert here, you can see this fella here, he's a lovely, lovely gentleman. He's been teaching suturing now for many decades. He's got more than 40 years experience in private practice before he started teaching with us. So Norbert wrote the first surgery activities, and Norbert trained me and taught me how to show the students how to get started. And Norbert pops in, you can see him here for workshops with the students. So if he's got a spare 2 hours, we put an announcement out and say to the students, Norbert will be at the hub doing a suturing workshop at lunchtime. Come down if you've got spare time. And we start to bring them in that way as well. Different staff, obviously everybody has their area of expertise, and if everybody just brings one activity in, you've got a tremendous amount of variety spanning all years of the program right from the very start. So getting that staff engagement is really important. The other area where you really need that staff engagement, where we've found it tremendously beneficial, is that the staff themselves need to, one, be seen to be using the models. If the staff look embarrassed or uncomfortable using our models, the students think that it's not a good idea. So Dr. Azmat was talking about that modelling of skills practice. When the students see our expert staff using our models, they automatically gravitate towards the same models. So our specialist equine surgeon who has been trained overseas, he's a remarkable surgeon. He will quite often come down here and suture with the students on the silicone pads. So if this exceptional equine surgeon, which the racing industry hunts for all over this country, is prepared to use the silicone pads, that tells the students that this is a valuable exercise and practicing on them really does pay off. So that modelling is very, very important from the staff, and the staff need to sell that message to the students during their pracs. So most of our staff now, if they know that there is an activity that they've created or that we've created down in the hub at the end of the prac, they will say to the students, you're not done yet. You need to go down to the hub and practice this repeatedly before your prac next week. And that way it engages the students and lets them know where that priority is. With regards to the models themselves, the simulators range in fidelity tremendously. So this is one of the high fidelity, this is a Friesian cow that we bought from Canada. This cow costs $54,000 Australian. I have no idea what that translates to in your currency, but here it's a ridiculous amount of money. She's designed for anatomy. She can actually be milked. She has 4 quarters and can be milked. She can birth this calf. That calf is made of silicone and it's weighted, so it actually weighs 39 kilos, and she can birth it. She has a big plastic uterus in here, and the calf can be birthed. You can set up dystocia scenarios inside her. She came with these. This is the 4 pregnancy stages that she came with. Oops, sorry. These are the 5 pregnancy stages that she came with. You can buy this as a set. This was $5,500. It works out at about $1,000 a reproductive tract. These are really high fidelity. Inside, they feel exactly as the anatomy feels within the cow, and these allow the students not only to develop their tactile sensitivity, but actually the tactile awareness of exactly what it's going to feel like in the cow. So in here they can feel, in this one they can feel the little vesicle, they're looking for the membrane slip, and in this they can feel the size of the fetus that's developing. It's fluid filled. These are really, truly excellent models and absolutely worth the money. However, our cow, $54,000, you need a lot of outcomes to pay for that. Our cow is widely used. We use her for first year handling and anatomy, so that they can practice the anatomy, they can find their injection sites, they can practice haltering and restraining her. The 4th years and the 3rd years, the 3rd years use her for clinical exam, the 4th years use her for their reproductive studies and mammary studies, and they use her for dystocia. So she has been quite valuable, but cost effective, I'm not sure yet. How we start them on their rectal palpation is with these tactile trainers. So these are just cardboard boxes with random stuff in them. They've got a bit of neoprene on the front so that you can push your hand through the opening to go in, and the students are asked to go into those boxes, grab any item, describe it in terms of texture and size and shape, and then they can remove it, and they have to keep doing this until they can size it and describe it to within 1 centimetre of its actual size. And we teach them tricks to do it, but that's their starting learning activity. That cost exactly $1 to make. So these sort of activities that help them develop their tactile sensitivity. So these are the two extremes of low fidelity and high fidelity. This was actually made by a student as a project 2 years ago, a third-year student who was having difficulty learning to palpate a feline abdomen. And obviously the cats weren't really helping her much because they're cats and they don't like having their abdomens palpated. And she made the anatomy out of different textures, and we just put that into a soft sack of material. And you could actually practice and while it doesn't look anything like a cat, hence the low fidelity, tactilely, it felt exactly like a cat's abdomen. And you could palpate whether it had a full bladder or an empty bladder by changing out that balloon, number 5. And by changing out some of the intestines, you could have an obstructed intestine or a soft palpable intestine. If you felt that there was a full bladder, we actually purchased this model. So this is a medium fidelity model of a cat to do a urinary catheter placement. So this was the male model. The issue with some of these is this little component here is the only thing that you need to develop the skill. But there's about $1,000 worth of silicone in these sticking up legs and the rest of the body of the cat. So we're trying to create these high fidelity models for value, not appearance. So if all they had done was pour the silicone for the part of the anatomy that we needed to do a urinary catheter, that model would have cost about a quarter of what it did. So there is a lot of, we've been trying to redesign some models and build some new models internally and in collaboration with other universities that are very much focusing on having a high fidelity tactile and anatomy model, which doesn't have any extras, which aren't going to help the students improve their skills. So this is Bravo Dog, which we created with Sydney Uni. He's got a 3D printed skeleton inside a silicone overlay. We didn't put fur on because the fur makes it hard to clean and means that it won't last as long. So you can place an ET tube in him. The anatomy in the back of his throat is spot on for that of a dog. So exactly the same as the dog. The students can put the ET tube down the esophagus rather than trachea if they don't perform this skill correctly. They can use the laryngoscope to do it. They can do a jugular bleed on this dog. The eyes are set up so that you can put images in the back of the eye, whether that is a simple letter that you want them to read so that you can check that you're using the ophthalmoscope correctly. And the ear canals are set up in the same angles as on a dog so that students can learn to see through to the base of the ear canal without causing the dog pain in their ear. This one was done by a Japanese university. It's a beautiful catheter model so the students can, by using the syringe to create pressure in the vessel. It's a very simple model, but it's very elegant. And we don't need it to be inside a $5,000 silicone dog. We just need the leg. So we go down to, these are sort of a mid-fidelity model. So this was a tail vein bleed prac that we were teaching, and we wanted a way for the students to practice getting used to the needle and managing the needle and the tail before we put them behind our cattle who are not particularly enthusiastic about us performing this skill on them, not unreasonably. Part of what we do here is work with clinical consumables that are out of date. So rather than throw them out when they're expired, they come here and we build models from them. So there's nothing in this model that was expensive or we had to purchase. This was all built from leftover product from our veterinary hospital or donated product from hospitals and other clinical areas. So the tail vein, when you look at it, doesn't look anything like a tail, but when you palpate it, it feels exactly like the underside of a cow's tail. We use expired fluid bags with colouring in them to simulate the blood. And again, by attaching them to a syringe, we can create pressure in that vessel. You can actually create a pulse in that vessel and the students can practice holding them up. So this was an old Breeding Betsy pregnancy diagnosis model that was used years ago and has been decommissioned because it wore out. But the tail on it was ideal And so we were able to make this in-house and then practice. The students were able to practice before going out and attempting this on a cow for the first time. So the students felt more confident attempting it. We were able to give better, clearer direction because we were able to do it in the quiet of a lab without the pressure of worrying that they were going to be kicked or injured. And when they finally did go out to do the prac, their skills were so much better that the welfare of the cows was improved during that prac. They go down to very, very low fidelity. So this is our hoof lifting model, where we first teach the students how the horse's legs bend. So despite the fact that these are just lumps of wood, they only bend in the direction that a horse's leg will bend. And this is where we teach the students for the first time how to technically pick up a horse's hoof and how to hold it between their knees and how to use hoof testers. The hooves are actually 3D printed. So this was a three-dimensional scan taken of a hoof in our anatomy lab that was then moved across to a 3D print. And it's very, very simple, but it's extremely cost effective and it gives the students a way to start. This was another modification to our plastic horse. So again, very simple, a bit of foam taped to their nose meant that we could teach the students how to apply a twitch before we actually applied it to a horse that was jumping around and let them gain some proficiency with the equipment before we interacted with the horse. Learning to use mastitis paddles, we actually put rotten yogurt into one of the quarters, which when it milks out through a calf teeth, tactilely feels pretty similar, but that is again a very simple low fidelity model that we've used here. So to get the students fully engaged with this process, the flexible delivery part of it, the learning resources need to be able to be modified depending on the student's preferences. So this is an example of how we would use a video resource. Trial and error, we've determined that recording instructional videos, firstly, they should be short. The skill needs to be deconstructed. We record them with audio on because that allows the students to either leave it on and have instructions. Some students prefer to just watch and turn the audio off. So students can take any path they like through this. Where we want to get them is from first introduction down to demonstrating this during a skills-based exam. We use this for remediation, where skills attempt the exam and fail, then they can come back to the models to remediate. We use this for them to build muscle memory or achieve mastery. Many of the students differ in the way that they interact with the videos. So some like the videos to be playing continuously and then they attempt it. Others start and stop and start and stop at each point where they get confused. As I said, some like the audio, some actually are confused by it and will just turn the volume off. But what it does is allow each student to figure out what works best for them and then stick to it and choose to keep performing that way. We do encourage students to watch the videos and practice before they go to the prac. Some of them choose not to do that. And to be honest, some of them are exceptional and they simply don't need to. And so those students are not wasting their time. They don't need to come here. Suturing is the fastest way to get students through the door. We've found anything that involves suturing, the students will put in extra time. They love learning how to suture. They love anything to do with surgery. And these are some really simple models that we use. So the castration model is a very simple model to let them practice their ligation sutures and make sure that their knots are tight and are not going to come undone. And similarly, this is a very simple spay model where they practice ligating the vessels repeatedly until their ligation sutures are perfect. This is a much simpler version of the catheter model, and this is old drip line. So when now, instead of throwing out our drip line, when we've finished using it in the clinic, it's collected and brought up to the hub, we rinse it, and then we use it to create these catheter models for catheter placement and IV injection practice. So very, very simple. The equipment that you see here is equipment that's been retired from surgery in one of our facilities. So we don't actually buy most of our equipment for the hub. It's actually donated through a whole range of channels. So over the last 3 years, since we got going, or 4 years with COVID year, You can see that the number of student visits has increased annually. So we're up to over 5,000 student visits a year. I have pretty consistent traffic through the doors. So I guess this is just that bigger picture indicating that this process has really worked. The students have really engaged with it. We still don't timetable classes here. The students come because they want to put that extra time into preparing their skills-based learning. The biggest thing that brings students in and keeps students coming back is actually assessment. If you don't assess the skills, you struggle to get them to come and practice them. So this was our first year of operation, but it shows this really, really clearly. So the top line here is showing the cumulative usage of the hub. That was the week, these were each week of semester, and this is the week we ran the 4th year skills exam. So this was a must-pass exam. The year before the hub opened, 35% of students failed that exam and had to repeat it. The year the hub opened, it was less than 10% failed that exam, and the 10% that failed did not use the hub prior to the exam. Everybody else did. So we had massive impact in that 1 year. But you can see first year handling exams, all the usage was first years. Third year assignments, that's because they are video assignments and then need the equipment that's down here. We get another spike in usage. 4th year OSCE, that's the second skills exam in 4th year. And again, you can see most of the traffic is the 4th years coming in. 3rd year OSCE, suddenly we're getting a flood of 3rd years. So this was a deliberate tactic in 2017 to start getting the students used to using this facility, was to match what was on offer to the assessment program of each year level. So a month before each of those skills exams, I would change the activities that were offered, and I would start emailing the students via the learning management system to say, hey, you've got a skills exam in 4 weeks. You need to be checking your skills. You need to come down to the hub and practice these 5 skills. It's all laid out for you. Come on down. And that actually increased the engagement. Once they came in for, you can see tracking underneath there. Once they came in and used the hub and figured out how beneficial it was, they start to come back between assessment periods. But absolutely, if tying what you are offering in your self-directed learning program to their outcomes in assessment drives motivation for the students to engage a lot during the beginning. And again, this is just a little bit more data to show that relationship between what we assess and how important that assessment is. So these assessment points in the curriculum, you can see what year of the program they are in by the course code. You can see the difference between an assessment that is a hurdle, as in they can't pass the course without passing the skills assessment, and an assessment which simply impacts their grades. And all the highest usage spikes are tied to the ones that determine whether a student will move on out of our course. It sometimes seems like disengagement, or that our students are not committed, but the evidence that I have seen is that that is not true. It's actually about time management. These students are incredibly time poor. The volume of knowledge that we're asking them to acquire and the volume of skills is so high that they feel that if it is not assessed, they can't focus on it because there is so much we're going to assess them on. They need to focus on their assessment points or they won't pass the degree. And that they are highly engaged and motivated to do well. And again, this is just showing that those peaks are very much related to accessible items, and accessible items that will hold them back are the ones that they will spend more time practicing. Same again. So this determines for us, I think, where the most effective way to use this is not just around driving engagement with the hub and student practice, but it's recognising what we need to put into our assessment. If it's a skill that we absolutely know that we want them to have and we want them to practice, then we must assess it in our coursework. If it's a skill that we'd like them to practice, we could maybe not include it in our assessment program, but it does help us decide what the most important skills assessments are that we want to have the students build that muscle memory and achieve mastery rather than just potential competency in. So this is just some student feedback about how they feel about having the hub and where they find that it's effective and what they actually use it for. So again, those senior OSCEs that determine how they move through the program, generate most of our visits. Animal handling is another must pass part of the degree in first year. So we see a huge amount of usage around animal handling, and then suturing. The suturing doesn't need to be tied to an OSCE. It is the one skill that students will come for, whether it's assessed or not. They really enjoy learning to suture properly. So thank you very much for having me. If you have any questions, I'd be very happy to take them. If you think of something later, I'm very happy to receive emails as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have some submissions like that. You have beautifully devised this skills hub. Actually, we are trying to start a one hub like this here in Kashmir in our college, and maybe your assistance and your suggestions will be needed at that time. And you have said about that assessing, how to precisely assess the students about what they have benefited from the skills hub or like that. So how to assess more accurately like that?
We use a sort of multi-pronged approach to that. So we tend to have a similar staff base that observe the skills assessments year in, year out. And so after each round of skills assessment, there's always a conversation had with staff who has observed it to talk to them about whether they're seeing an improvement in the competency from the year before. I've got a register for hub usage. So students sign in and sign out. That's where all this data comes from. So I can go back and look at the records and see if the students are practicing. And tie that back in, and then we have surveyed the students repeatedly about whether they feel their competencies improved, whether they are able to see improvement in their skills the more that they're practicing down in the hub. So we sort of mix the three together.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Francis, for taking out time from your busy schedule to join us. You have enlightened us about the use of Clinical Skills Hub and given us deep insights into the whole concept of Skills Hub. I'm pretty sure that the information you have provided will definitely help us to create a facility at our college in near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I now invite Dr. Firdaus Ahmed Dar, Assistant Professor from Division of Veterinary Anatomy and Histology, to give a talk on self-directed learning readiness for veterinary students in India.
A very good afternoon to all of you. So I'll be presenting regarding a presentation, self-directed learning readiness of Indian veterinary students. Till now, we have heard about the concept of what is self-directed learning and how it can be used and how it can be a student-centered education. A brief, good talk has been given at the initial by the Dr. Azmat sir. Then the and Dr. Chapter has given about the skills hub, how we can use a skills hub in augmenting the self-directed learning. So I'll be giving a brief description about are the Indian students are ready to accept this self-directed learning. Basically, from last couple of years, we are actually knowingly or unknowingly, we are actually in the mode of self-directed learning because of this COVID-19 or because of other issues. So we are in a stage of self-directed learning. And my concern is that if by some time we face the students physically, shall we change again from the student-directed learning to the teacher-centered learning? How can we incorporate that the student-directed learning that we are going nowadays, how we can incorporate in this, and are our students ready that time to face this self-directed learning? So the definition of the self-directed learning is already given by these speakers. The other name of this self-directed learning is called as autodidactism, which means that self-learning. It is not. It is totally different from that of the self-study. Self-directed learning is totally different from a self-study, totally different from that of a self-regulating learning. The definition, the concept of this self-directed learning that was first put in 1975 by Malcolm Novalis. He has given a concept about that a process by which an individual take an initiative in diagnosing their learning needs, identifying the human and material resources for learning, choosing and implementing the appropriate learning strategies, and evaluating the learning outcomes. So all of the things what a learner should diagnose, identify, learn, and then evaluate itself is actually the self-directed learning. And the main motive of self-directed learning is learner's control. There are two controls basically in the education. One is the learner and one is the educator. So basically in this self-directed learning, you should have the one who is going to for this self-directed learning, he should have a control, and the teachers, tutors, and mentors or the peers just simply they can assist or they can scaffold the learning of this learner. So the main motive of this self-directed learning is that this learning should have the learner's control. Now, if you go back in the history, you have a great philosophers. You have the Socrates, you have the Plato, you have the Aristotle, you have the Isaac Newton, and you have the Benjamin Franklins. These people are also the discoveries, the inventions they have brought is because of this self-education or because of the self-direction. That's why this self-directed learning forms an integral and important part of the education system in this country or outside this country. Now, if you talk about the Medical Council of India, whether they have adopted this self-directed learning or not, in 2019, Medical Council of India has put a state that and mandates for a medical student that he or she should have 24 hours of self-directed learning during the entire MBBS course. So what about the veterinary course? What about the veterinary education? What about the self-directed learning? Are we spending, like the Francis Chapter has rightly said that more than 150 hours, the students are there in the skills hub as self-directed learners. So should we start as a facility here in our college or in entire country as a source so that this self-directed learning can be included? Now, this is the paper that I got from the internet, that what they are saying, that the title as self-directed learning in the veterinary medicine. Are the students ready? And in the conclusion, in the study, what they have put as veterinary students prefer learning approach that foster the self-directed learning, which is desirable for the students' long life learning. Long life learning is actually the motto of self-directed learning. And you have to foster the self-directed learning by the techniques. And one of the best technique that I can see is that establishing the Sickles hub, like they have established in the Queensland University in Australia. They have developed a very beautiful this Sickles hub to facilitate, to augment the self-directed learning. So we can here, like this, can here develop a strategy, develop a techniques, develop those things which can foster the self-directed learning. Now, what is the importance of this self-directed learning in the veterinary education? What I can see is that, be it the medical or be it veterinary scientists or veterinary professionals, we face the diseases and we face the treatments. Those are continuously changing. And in these continuously changing, be it diseases or the treatments, you should be a long learner. You cannot simply put what you have studied, what the teacher, what the educator, or what your peer has taught you. You cannot simply rely on that. You should be a long learner, because you are a health worker. You might be facing problems. You might be facing the conditions where you need a long learning procedures. Plus, there is a critical need for veterinary students to become a self-directed lifelong learners. Like the medical students, MBBS students, they are putting some part of their degree as a lifelong, some part of a degree as a lifelong learners. We should also put as some part of their degree as a lifelong learners. We have to start like this. So this was the question, why self-directed learning is not learned and practiced in veterinary education. Now I will reframe this question that actually what I have started, we are already in the phase of self-directed learning. The classes we are nowadays, the classes we are giving, the class teaching we are just giving to the students, we are actually in the phase of self-directed learning. But still, there are some of the things which will hinder this self-directed learning in the veterinary education. Some of the things that I put here is that have the thing that is curriculum and the content coverage. Often the educators are often here, we in the veterinary profession, we give more stress on the curriculum and the content. The more the content we think we cover, the more rigorous the education program is, but it is never gonna like that. The essential consequence of this excessive course content is that the student actually learn less, that we know that. If you giving more and more content to the students, going to dictate more things to the students, they are actually learning very less. And in turn, leads to the memorization. And this memorization actually leads to superficial or the surface learning. And this superficial or the surface learning basically is a volatile learning. Usually one cannot learn, because if you are putting more and more content to the students. Now, sometimes what we face that our curriculum is not properly designed so that there will be the connections between the disciplines. If we talk about our courses, we have so many courses starting from the first year up to the 5th year. Basically, these courses should be developed such that they are interdisciplinary. As they rightly said in the inaugural session by the Nazir sir, that the courses should be interdisciplinary, so that like self-directed learning, the main aim of this is that it cuts the disciplinary boundaries. It cannot be, this self-directed learning is not the domain of a particular subject, particular division. This self-directed learning belongs to all. We should inculcate this self-directed learning in every discipline, so that our students become lifelong learners. Now, one of the factors that inhibits the self-directed learning is the assessment. So some of the assignments currently that are going here is that they are also, the reason is that we are not positioned to implement this self-directed learning. Generally, what we taught, we assess that without knowing what the students actually gain. And usually our assessments, they increase the anxiety case among the students, and this anxiety leads to the superficial memorization, and this superficial memorization actually inhibits the self-directed learning. We have basically, if you talk about the assessment in case of the veterinary sciences, they have always been changing, and recently our assessments based upon the objective type questions like multiple type questions and other things. I cannot understand how a multiple type questions can assess a student of it is learning, of it is thinking about a particular subject. So if we really wanted to promote this self-directed learning, we would assess our students and self-directed learning skills as well as assessing their knowledge acquisitions. So we should promote this self-directed learning. We should we should just make think the students to go for this self-directed learning. And for me, the best thing in regarding the assessmenting of the student is that we should go for, at least we should try for open book examination. And open book examination is one of the best, our initial step of assessing the students regarding their self-directed learning. I too tried 2 or 3 times as this type of examination, as open book examination, to the last that I think those are now in the second year and to this first year. And I have given them an assessment, just a mock assessment regarding the anatomy. And I have given them a time, not 2 days, like 10 or 15 minutes. I have given them 1 day, 2 days, just to go through these questions. Just open your book, go through the book and try to solve these questions. I think this open book examination is the first step of self-directed learning. Now, how to promote this self-directed learning? You have one of the approaches that promote the self-directed assessing is that problem-based learning. I think this problem-based learning, we started back, and when I was in doing my PhD in the Kerala, I think Lucy ma'am and Maya madam is with us. They have started this problem-based learning, and that time, in this problem-based learning approach of learning, what they are going to do is that they are putting a situation. They are making first a group of the students, and in the group of the students, they are putting a certain situation. Suppose they are just showing a video of any animal, particular part of animal. Suppose they are showing the forelimb, and in the forelimb, they are showing that this animal is lamb in the forelimb. Now, they are just simply instructing some of the things about this lameness, about the anatomy, about the many things. Afterwards, they are saying, or they are just telling these group of the students that you go and search for what actually this animal is having. What are the things that will be concerned? What will be the anatomy? What will be the anatomical difficulties because of this animal is lamb? What will be the physiological differences? What will be the surgical differences? And how these things come up with the next week, come up with these issues and see yourself whether you have solved this problem or not. That is actually the problem-based learning. So many, there is a case-based learning, team-based learning, small group of learning. These actually are the approaches that usually promote SDL or self-directed learning, and we should promote. Now, this slide I have put it here is that in our faculty, we have every year increasing number of the students, and roughly I have estimated from 2014 to 2020, we have 560 students, 560 students here. This is actually this slide is actually the complement to the skills hub that Dr. Schafter has presented, because we also want to start a skills hub here. So usually with the increased number of the students, and if you look the curricula, the veterinary as such, their applied part of the clinical courses starts from the first year. And by the first year up to the 5th year, and if you look nowadays in the clinics, you have more than 300 students in the clinic. And all the students will not will not have a chance to go thoroughly test their clinical and the technical skills during the degree. There will be many of the reasons. One of the reasons is increasing number of the students. One of the reason is decreasing the number of the cases are not coming there. And some of the students will be reluctant to ask the questions. So what will be the solution for these students if they go tomorrow with the degree from here? Maybe they will face a problem. The thing they have not seen, in the degree program because of these reasons, because of increasing number of students, because of decreasing number of cases. Maybe a solution that is there is the skills hub, a facility to augment the self-directed learning and the clinical competence, a facility that usually we want to generate here so that we'll bring what the Dr. Friend has rightly said, that you have to bring the simulators, you have to bring the many things in facility. The students which are reluctant to ask the questions, the students which are not getting the chance to see the cases, they will come, they will see, they in their own leisure time, whatever time they will come. That is actually the self-directed learning in the physical form. The virtual form we are promoting now, the virtual form we are giving the self-directed learning, but in the physical form, we have to promote this in the formation of the skills hub. So there are some of the schools that you have in the, Azmat sir has already discussed that some of the schools have already put in their curriculum this self-directed learning. You have the University of California Davis School of Veterinary Medicine. They have put this self-directed learning in their curriculum as such. So in order to assess whether our students will be ready, we have a little study here in the FVSc level. And in this study, we have just pre-assessed the need of skills hub and pre-assessed the need of self-directed learning. In that, we have put some 20 questions. We have included 120 individuals or 120 individuals for this study. And we have given them a scale that you just identify what actually, whether you need among those 20, what actually you need. And what it has come up that among this, a majority of the students, usually 80 to 90% agreed almost all of the things, all of the items that we have put in this assessment. So my thing is that if we just design this self-directed learning in each and every subject, the students will be agreed in pertaining their courses through the self-directed learning. So the in net conclusion, how the self-directed learning will improve if the students try to inculcate this type of the learning. So one of the challenge is usually you have the vast curriculum in the veterinary itself, and you have a curriculum that will be taught by the variety of the teachings. So this self-directed learning will improve the learning. How? Different learning style in the pace of learning students. You have a class of 120 or 110 students. All the students are not alike. You should have a technique that these students, all the students get equal